Velma is an adult-oriented animated series that is based on Scooby-Doo, but doesn't feature Scooby-Doo. It features Velma as the titular character, who is a race-swapped lesbian, and this show exists for some reason, and we are going to talk about why this actually exists for some reason. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored, so let's chuck it to the sponsor, bring it back over here, discuss the whole thing on the other side. The internet is becoming more and more of a necessity each and every day. You didn't need me to tell you that, but guess what? I just did. And one of the biggest problems with the internet, with Wi-Fi signals, is that it doesn't go everywhere it needs to go in your house. Even in my small New York City apartment, I find myself with dead spots. This is why I'm always looking at new extenders, new boosters, things to make my signal work better. And I try not to get it from my cable company because greedy ISPs charge you money to rent you equipment in order to make sure your stuff works properly. And it's one of the reasons why I'm super happy to be partnering with BoostTheWiFi.com, which is this nifty small device that will extend and boost your Wi-Fi signal to reach those dead spots. Don't overspend on equipment from your internet company. Go to BoostTheWiFi.com, get yourself one of these devices, and enjoy the internet that you're paying for. So undoubtedly, from the moment that the show was announced, from the moment that you guys found out that Mindy Kaling would not only be voicing Velma, but apparently would be the showrunner behind this show, Velma, you have heard take after take talking about how ridiculous this is, talking about how absurd it is, that we need to focus on making Velma a lesbian, making an adult-oriented show around her, handing it off to somebody who's as hacky as Mindy Kaling, etc. You guys have already gotten those takes. I understand it. I get you. Don't. And the teaser trailer for the show came out, and the teaser trailer was all about mocking people who would be upset by this, basically preemptively attacking the audience due to the fact that they were going to make overwhelming changes from Scooby-Doo in order to make this show work. And the reason why they were doing the show under the banner of Scooby-Doo is they thought that the name brand recognition of the character Velma would lead people to accidentally watch this, realize it's trash, but at least get those premiere view numbers up so Mindy Kaling wouldn't feel like a failure.
Dear HBO Max, I just learned you intend to make a genre-bending comedic origin story of Judy Jetson. When I heard this new version of Judy Jetson wouldn't be boy crazy, the only word I had to describe my disgust is jinkies. If there is one thing the internet agrees on, it's that you should never change anything ever. I hope you die. Sincerely, Velma. Well, at least Judy's still white.
Now look, this stuff happens over and over and over again. We've seen it happen repeatedly, and all the signs of a terrible reboot are there, including the obligatory race swapping of characters, just so the show can appear to be more diverse. But to be fair to Mindy Kaling, she's kind of in a tough spot when it comes to being an Indian American working on a Hollywood project, because after that documentary called The Problem with Apu dropped, where they made a big stink about one of the greatest comedic voice actors of all time being the voice of Apu.
I hate Apu. And because of that, I dislike The Simpsons.
The whole series.
Yeah.
It kind of became obligatory from that point forward that you have to have the same person of the same race, especially when it concerns South Asians, voicing those animated characters, because God forbid we decide that race isn't the most important thing. God forbid we don't put ethnicity above everything. Let's just change everything in order to suit the modern sentiments as laid out by that so-called comedian who was complaining about Apu because Apu really hurt his feels growing up in early childhood, and he wasn't able to become a success because Apu hurt his feelings in early childhood, and it's kind of like blackface, according to Whoopi Goldberg.
Does Apu count as a minstrel, since it's brown paint, a white guy's voice?
He has all the qualifications.
Now, of course, there's the whole lesbian thing. I'm sure you guys are aware of the fact that there was an announcement made by the owners of the Scooby-Doo IP, not the creators of Scooby-Doo, but the owners of the Scooby-Doo IP, that Velma was in fact a lesbian, and when you Google Velma's name, you end up with the fireworks and the transes and the lesbian flag, dog, and all that stuff because it's so stunning and so brave that this children's character that people used to joke about in an amusing way being a lesbian was actually outed as a lesbian by the people who currently are the stewards of the Scooby-Doo IP. Again, it would have been interesting if they decided to make Daphne come out as a bisexual or lesbian. By the way, she is in this show, because the joke wasn't that Daphne was a lesbian, but you're actually taking the insult against Velma because she's a frumpy girl and making that into the reality in the IP, and then just pretending like it's progress, as if the reason people weren't saying that Velma was a lesbian wasn't based on the fact that she dresses super frumpy in comparison to Daphne. Really leaning into the stereotypes when you think about it on that one. But again, a lot of people said, you know what, let's give this Velma show a chance. Let's see what Mindy Kaling can come up with. I'm sure she's not going to produce a mean-spirited, racist adaptation of Scooby-Doo for adults, because that would just be a pointless thing that would only achieve the worst animated series ranking on IMDb in the history of the world. Oh wait, that's exactly what happened. Let's go to some of the clips.
Also, that he was just another entitled rich guy who might kill someone because he has a tiny dong. He's been so pampered, his body hasn't even felt the need to fully mature.
So let's be clear. Scooby-Doo, in a supposedly Scooby-Doo-based show, gone. Doesn't exist. The whole premise was talking dog for kids, group of people come together, they solve mysteries. Then you have Velma, who's race swapped because when you lack creativity, you just race swap into an Indian person because Mindy Kaling is voicing her. Then you have Daphne, who is a half Asian that's a drug dealer.
According to TV, it's morally okay to deal drugs if your life is just kinda crappy. Like, your kid's sick, you're a widow with a mortgage, you have to live on a lake in Missouri.
Those are all white people, Daphne. Minorities on TV can only deal drugs to escape poverty.
And then you have Shaggy, who is now Norville, which is the actual original name for Shaggy, who's basically the anti-Shaggy, and he's a black dude. But for Fred, the one person that they kept white, he is so white privileged that he hasn't gone through puberty. He is so white privileged that he can't even cut his own steak. He needs his mother to do it for him.
I mean, Fred literally can't feed himself.
That's not true. No, you just cut the food and put it on the, what's the dumb thing called? A dingo hopper. Cutties. Mother, cutties.
Oh my God, he is
This is what Mindy Kaling came up with for her adaptation of Scooby-Doo. Need I point out that Indian Americans out-earn white people in the United States of America? In fact, they're the top earners in the United States, in Canada, and in the United Kingdom. So if anybody wants to talk about privilege, maybe we should talk about Mindy Kaling. But the show actually gets even worse, even more racist, even more anti-white, and even more mean-spirited, to the point where it's actually patently absurd.
Why would Fred kill Brenda just because she photographed him in the bathroom?
Why wouldn't he? If I were a rich white dude, I'd kill everybody just to get away with it.
So Mindy Kaling decides that she's going to accuse Fred of being the murderer based on the fact that he is rich and white and therefore the most likely suspect to be the murderer. Now, this proves a number of things about Mindy's character in this show. One, she's incredibly stupid. Obviously, if you think being rich and white is something that would lead you to be a murderer, you've never seen any crime statistics ever. And considering Velma used to be the brains of the operation to a certain extent, it's kind of hard for me to take her seriously when she's making an assumption that is so out of line with the statistics, it's absurd. Number two, it also proves that Mindy Kaling is so out of touch with reality and actually doesn't realize that if she represents all her minority characters as evil racists who just want to enjoy a white person they know is innocent going down for a crime that he didn't commit, then that actually is horrible representation of those minorities. And remember, the whole diversity swaps is for representation. These characters are not meant to be the characters in Scooby-Doo anymore. They're meant to be stand-ins for minorities, representatives of those minorities, mascots for those minorities, and she presents all of them as anti-white, mean-spirited racists that would love, absolutely would love, revenge against white people for perceived past wrongs.
Fred is probably innocent.
Yeah, but isn't it comforting to see a rich white guy get wrongly convicted for once?
I'm too distracted to enjoy it.
And again, I say for perceived wrongs because Mindy Kaling is somebody who has done nothing but benefit from the United States of America. Despite the fact that she is incredibly low talented, she ended up stumbling onto the American adaptation of The Office, which was created by Ricky Gervais, just like the British adaptation. That show ended up taking off. She got her hacky, lame show, The Mindy Project, despite the fact that her stand-up comedy isn't any good. People seem to keep booking her, and she ended up stumbling upon Scooby-Doo's IP with HBO Max, and they gave her free reign to make an adult version of this children's series. Now, everybody on the internet.com has made, to a certain extent, the points that I've made so far. Show's mean-spirited, show's not funny, show's racist, show's incredibly woke, all of that. But what I really want to focus on, and my key takeaway from this, is that last part. Why did we need an adult adaptation of Scooby-Doo? Why did this need to be converted rather than something new to be created? Now, obviously, there's the reason of name brand recognition, but I actually think it goes much, much further than that. I think in past generations in the United States of America, what would happen between parents and children would be that parents would hand down things that they enjoyed to their children. Things that were made for children, that they enjoyed when they were children, would be passed down to children. However, we have seen a giant shift in our society. Children are living with their parents much, much longer. We have an arrested development issue in the United States of America, and that has led a lot of people in the millennial generation and in the Zoomer generation, who are becoming the peak consumers, the millennials, that never moved out of their parents' house, that never started a family of their own, that never actually grew up, that never actually moved past adolescence. So rather than enjoying a certain IP as a kid and wanting to share that with their children, they never got out of the enjoying this IP. So what people actually expect from these intellectual properties, from these shows and all of that, is for them to grow up along with them, and I think that is what is creating the problems. Scooby-Doo is something that they've had a bunch of series and a bunch of updated series, largely for children, but overall is a product of its time. If you look at the old school animation from Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, if you listen to the music, the soundtrack, and all that, it has a very 70s aesthetic. It's dated to that point, and we don't really need to see Scooby-Doo match the audience growing up, because it exists for children, and specifically for children of that time. There's a reason why they reboot Scooby-Doo every now and again for another generation, but always keep it within the context of the time that it exists. But we haven't really gotten another version of a kid's Scooby-Doo in a little while. We haven't really gotten a new series made for that same demographic set within the modern times or close to the modern times. And despite the fact that families and parents would be happy to subscribe to HBO Max, or at least to give their kids access to the kids' content on HBO Max to watch that new series, we instead get an older version updated with modern values because, again, Scooby-Doo has to grow up with its fans rather than the fans growing up and introducing it to the next generation of fans. And by the way, this is something that goes far beyond kids' content or explicitly kids' content. We also see this with our movies. How many movies are we going to watch where Harrison Ford wears the same exact set of clothes, being an old man, that he wore 40 years ago? Again, it's because people can't let go of the past. They can't let go of these old shows, of these old movies, that Hollywood keeps producing it. We can complain all we want about diversification of the same IPs. We can complain all we want about the wokeification of the same IPs, about the updated reimaginings for modern audiences, but in reality, people are not letting go. They're not attaching themselves to new IPs. They're not sharing new stuff or old stuff with their kids and moving on to new adult content. Instead, we have a lot of people living in the past. This 80s renaissance has been going on for about 10 years. Enough with the 80s already. Let it go. I understand a lot of you were children during the 80s, but trust me, let it go. And now we're getting into the 90s renaissance period, and again, let go of the 90s. It wasn't that great. It's not that great of a time. What you're dealing with is nostalgia syndrome, and nostalgia is just another form of pandering, and I've had enough with it. Look, if you're going to take something and change it so much that it is completely alien to the original intent, concept, purpose, and target audience, then just create something new. It's not like there's a dearth of appetite for adult-oriented animation, And it's not like people can't create new versions of these. They can't build cult followings, and people can't get interested in it. If I were to pitch you, separate from Scooby-Doo, an adult-oriented animation about a murder that takes place, maybe not in a high school because that's a little bit played out, but in a college campus, you would probably get on board. If I were to tell you that there were going to be gross characters throughout the course of the running of this series, violence, adult content, if you're into that sort of thing, and all that with a protagonist that has a lot of flaws and might not be likable, might be cynical, then you might actually get on board with this as long as you don't call that a derivative of Scooby-Doo. As long as that doesn't also become a political message about how they can take any version of the past, vandalize it, make it grow up along with us, even though it was never intended to do so, and then present it to you like it's A-OK, first class all the way. It's not. It's not good. It's not interesting. It's not compelling. And again, it is a sign of weakness in our society that the expectation is that the IPs will keep producing more and more stuff for the people who were fans of this when they were 5 years old. Now, I've talked about in the past how I love the DC animated universe. It's absolutely fantastic. I loved it when I was a kid, and I loved it more when I was an adult. But the thing is, that's because it was intended, it was written in such a way that adults could enjoy it with their children. You're introducing your kid to Batman, but these are actually good, compelling Batman stories with well-defined characters, great voice acting, rest in peace Kevin Conroy, and all of that. But the thing is, newer additions to the DC animated universe, when they go back and revisit it, aren't that interesting to me. When they try to update it, but also make it more hardcore and more violent, I'm not really on board with it. If I want to watch new DC content, I'll watch new animated DC content because their live action content is not very good. I don't need that version, that universe, to adapt and go forward just because everybody's nostalgic for it, because those 90s kids, like myself, are growing up. I'm fine with it the way it is. And I think we all, as a society, need to look at our toys, look at our old things, and say, you know what? I'm fine the way that it is, and move on. Because every slightly passable reimagining, every so-called good updated version, every grown-up version of whatever this thing is just something that is going to push Hollywood to make 10,000 worse things. So if you're upset about Velma, don't watch every episode of Velma and critique how terrible it is. Point out that this concept is a problem, that we're not on board with it, and we should shame other people. That's right, I said shame because it works. Add some stigma. Stigmas are good. We talked about this on the channel before, to people who want their content to grow up with them. Enough of that nonsense. You need to grow up. You need to move on. You need to clean your room. Oh wait, I'm not trying to be a Jordan Peterson in this, but you do need to grow up and like different things. Evolve your tastes. Now, before I close it out and open the floor to you guys out there in the comments, I just want to say, our boy Nuance Bro appeared on Timcast IRL, clearly the most engaging guest that will be on for the week. I will link that episode in full. Go over and support him. Go over and support his YouTube channel. And thank you, Nuance Bro, for doing exactly what I paid you to do.
I'm sure Actual Justice Warrior is totally willing to come here and be a co-host.
Didn't we had him on the show before?
I know, but you should bring him on as a regular host. Why not?
Oh, I mean, he can come,
I had to give him at least one shout out during the show. I
Is
told
he
him
easy chat?
Did he pay you?
No, I always, I had to. He's a good friend. So
check is in the mail, buddy. Plan executed exactly and precisely the way I drew it up in the board, and I really appreciate the totally inorganic paid sponsorship that I gave you for Timcast IRL appearance. Thank you so much. And for the rest of you, if you like this video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about the reality behind the Velma series. Till next time.